The strange thing about being slapped in a ballroom full of rich people is how quiet the room gets afterward. Not polite quiet. Not the kind where people cough and look at their phones. I mean the real kind. The kind where even the ice in someone's glass stops clinking. I didn't see it coming. 1 second, Adrian was smiling at the crowd like the perfect CEO. The next second, his hand cracked across my face so hard my teeth hit together. For a moment, I honestly thought maybe I'd imagined it. Then my cheek started burning. Someone nearby smelled like expensive whiskey, strong enough that it stung my nose. Adrian leaned close to me, smiling like he was still giving a speech. "You should know your place," he said quietly. Then louder, "To the room." My sister sometimes forgets she and her mother were just a mistake my father once made. A few people laughed. Nervous laughs. I looked past him toward my father. Sebastian Hawthorne stood near the front table with the investors. He didn't look shocked, didn't look angry. He just sighed like Adrian had spilled wine on the carpet. "Adrian," he said, almost bored, "don't push the joke too far. We have guests tonight." And that was it. He turned away. I stood there with my cheek throbbing and 1,000 eyes on me. Anyway, my name is Vivian Hawthorne. I am 32 years old. And that was the moment I decided the Hawthorne family was going to hear the truth. I wiped the blood from my lip. Then I clapped my hands twice. The sound of my hands clapping cut through the room. Twice. The ballroom lights dimmed slightly. Not dark, just enough for the screen behind the stage to wake up. Arthur had arranged the presentation system earlier that evening. The technician near the control panel glanced at me and gave a small nod when I clapped. A glass shattered somewhere near the bar. The sharp crack echoed through the room. Adrian frowned at me. "What the hell are you doing?" "Vivian?" I didn't answer him right away. I looked out at the room. Board members, investors, people who had watched Adrian run this company for years. "Relax," I said. "You like presentations." The screen filled with numbers. Account records, dates, transfers, not guesses. Real entries pulled from the internal audit system. One of the board members stepped closer to the screen. Adrian laughed under his breath. "You think spreadsheets scare me?" The next slide appeared. Photos. Adrian on a yacht off Miami. Champagne in his hand. Music speakers stacked behind him. Someone in the crowd whispered. The next image replaced it. A casino floor in Macau. Adrian leaning over a blackjack table. Those were listed as marketing events. I said, that weekend alone cost the company $2,300,000. Adrian's smile tightened. "You're embarrassing yourself." The screen changed again. An email. From Adrian Hawthorne. Subject line Midtown Redevelopment Proposal. My design. My presentation. My name removed. Adrian shifted his weight. For a second. He stopped smiling. Then the final video began. His voice filled the ballroom speakers. "If the project collapses, blame Vivian." She signed the planning documents. The room went completely still. You ever hear a lie collapse in public? It sounds exactly like that. Adrian turned toward me slowly. "You stupid idiot." And that's when another file appeared on the screen. This one didn't come from him. The next file slid onto the screen. White background, company header. Nothing fancy. Just an email. I heard someone near the front whisper my father's name before I even turned around. Sebastian Hawthorne. The sender line was his. Adrian saw it too. His jaw tightened. "You don't want to do this," he muttered. Honestly, I almost laughed. That warning came a little late. The room was so quiet I could hear the air system humming somewhere in the ceiling. I read the email out loud. "Adrian, handle the withdrawals quietly. If anything goes wrong with the redevelopment deal, Vivian will take responsibility." She signed the documents. A ripple moved through the crowd, not loud. Just that low, uneasy shifting sound people make when something ugly finally shows its face. Adrian didn't look at the screen anymore. He looked at my father. Sebastian didn't move, didn't blink, just watched me like I was a problem that hadn't been solved yet. I stepped closer to him. "You knew," I said. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. "You knew he was draining the project funds." Sebastian sighed slowly. "Lower your voice. Vivian." That was it. No denial. No surprise. Just irritation. "You're making a scene in front of investors," he added. I stared at him. For a second, I actually thought I might lose my nerve. You ever realize your family isn't really your family? Yeah. That moment hits weird. Adrian smirked again, confidence creeping back. "You think emails prove anything?" I looked back at the screen. "Not by themselves," I said quietly. Then the lights shifted again, and the next file started playing. The next file started playing. No yachts this time. No casinos. Just Adrian sitting in a private lounge with two men in suits. Dim light, a bottle between them. The kind of room that smells like old leather and expensive smoke. One of the men leaned forward. "You're already behind $3 million, he said. "Your company can't keep covering withdrawals like this." Adrian laughed. That easy laugh he used when he thought money fixed everything. "You don't understand," he said. "Hawthorne Development isn't my problem." The man frowned. "What does that mean?" Adrian took a slow drink. "My sister signed the redevelopment documents," he said. "If the project collapses, it lands on her." The man stared at him. "You're willing to send your own sister to prison." Adrian shrugged. "Vivian Hawthorne goes to prison. Not me." The video stopped. The ballroom stayed quiet. Someone near the back muttered something under their breath. Adrian turned toward me slowly. "So you've been digging through my life. You made it easy," I said. That's when my father finally stepped forward. "This ends now," Sebastian Hawthorne said. He looked toward the technicians near the control panel. "Turn the screen off." No one moved. Adrian's voice snapped sharp. "Did you hear him? Shut it down." Still nothing. You ever see someone realize the room stopped belonging to them? It happens slowly. Adrian looked around the ballroom. Investors, board members, people who used to laugh at everything he said. No one was laughing now. He pointed at me. "You think they'll choose you over me?" I exhaled slowly. "Honestly," I said, "they don't have to." At that exact moment, the ballroom doors opened. The video ended. The screen went black. No one spoke. Not the board, not the investors, not even Adrian. The ballroom sat in that heavy silence that follows something ugly finally becoming visible. Somewhere near the back, a phone buzzed against a wooden table, vibrating over and over until someone quietly turned it off. I stood there, breathing slowly. Honestly, I had been preparing for this moment for months. Meetings with Arthur, documents, quiet calls to people who don't like their names mentioned in public reports. You'd think I'd feel victorious. Mostly, I felt tired. Adrian finally laughed. Short, sharp. "You really planned a whole little show," he said. He turned to the crowd, spreading his hands like he was still running the room. "Look at her. She thinks a slideshow makes her powerful." No one laughed. Adrian leaned closer to me. "You've embarrassed the family," he whispered. "Congratulations." I kept looking toward the ballroom doors. He noticed. His smile thinned. "What are you waiting for?" I didn't answer. Arthur had told me they were already in the building, waiting until the evidence was shown publicly. You ever feel a room holding its breath? About a minute later, the ballroom doors opened. 3 people stepped inside. Dark jackets, badges. Adrian's voice dropped. "What the hell is this?" One of the detectives started walking straight toward the stage. The detectives didn't hurry. They walked the way people do when they've already finished the hard part somewhere else. Quiet, certain. One of them glanced briefly at the screen behind us. The other kept his eyes on Adrian. Arthur Caldwell stepped forward from the side of the stage. Most people in that room knew Arthur as the Hawthorne family attorney. Gray suit, calm voice. The man who handled contracts and settlements. Tonight he looked different. "That's him," Arthur said. He pointed directly at Adrian. The taller detective nodded once. "Adrian Hawthorne," he said evenly. "We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of corporate fraud, embezzlement, and falsification of financial records involving approximately $9,400,000 in company funds." Adrian blinked. For a moment, he didn't move at all. Then he laughed. "You're kidding. Nobody joined him. You think you can walk into my company and stage something like this?" He snapped. The detective didn't raise his voice. "Sir, turn around." Adrian's head turned toward my father. "Dad." Just that. Sebastian Hawthorne stood with his hands behind his back. His face gave nothing away. Adrian swallowed. "Say something." The detective reached for his wrist. The handcuffs closed with a sharp click that echoed across the ballroom. Adrian's hands began to tremble. Small, uncontrolled. No. This isn't right. He stared down at the cuffs, then at me. This isn't how it's supposed to happen. For the first time in his life, Adrian looked like a man who realized the rules had changed. The detectives turned him toward the exit, and that was when my father finally spoke. Not to Adrian, to me. "Are you finished?" my father said. His voice wasn't loud. Didn't need to be. The whole room turned toward him anyway. Adrian was halfway across the ballroom with the detectives. He twisted around. Dad Sebastian didn't even look at him. He kept his eyes on me. "You've embarrassed this family in front of investors, board members, and city officials," he said calmly. I folded my arms. "You mean I exposed your son?" "Careful," he replied. "You're confusing drama with victory." Adrian's voice echoed again from the door. "Dad, say something." The detectives kept walking. Sebastian still didn't turn. Honestly, that part surprised me. I always thought if the world collapsed, he'd at least try to save Adrian first. Instead, he stepped closer to the stage. "You think tonight changes anything," he said quietly. I didn't answer. He continued. "Adrian made mistakes, expensive ones, but companies survive scandals." The board members exchanged uneasy glances. Sebastian gestured toward the screen. "Your little performance doesn't change the structure of Hawthorne Development." His tone sharpened. "You don't run this company." "Vivian." I felt the room leaning in again, the balance shifting back toward him. "You ever watch someone rebuild their authority in real time? It's subtle. People straighten up, start listening again." Sebastian looked at the board. "I am still the majority shareholder." Then he looked at me. "So, unless you've discovered a miracle tonight..." Arthur Caldwell stepped beside me and placed a thin folder on the table. My father frowned. Arthur said calmly, "Actually, she has..." Arthur Caldwell opened the folder slowly. "Not for drama. That's just how Arthur moves. Careful. Precise." My father didn't move, but I saw the change in his face. A small tightening around his eyes. Recognition. Arthur placed the documents on the table between us. "Control of Hawthorne Development Group," he said calmly. "Doesn't sit where you believe it does." Sebastian gave a short laugh. "Don't start with legal theater. Arthur." Arthur slid the first document across the table. "This company was originally funded with capital from the Prescott estate." My father's voice sharpened. "That money became marital property when Lillian married me." Arthur shook his head. "No, it didn't." He tapped the page. "Before her death, Lillian Prescott established a protective trust. 52% of the company's controlling shares were placed inside that trust." The room shifted behind us. Chairs creaked. Someone let out a quiet breath. Sebastian stared at the document. "You're lying." Arthur didn't react. "The trust contains a control clause," he continued. If company assets are misused or diverted for personal gain, the controlling shares transfer to the protected beneficiary. He paused. The evidence presented tonight triggered that clause. My father's voice dropped lower. And who exactly is this beneficiary? Arthur turned slightly toward me. Vivian Hawthorne. The silence felt heavier than the slap earlier that night. Sebastian let out a sharp laugh. You expect the board to believe she suddenly controls this company? Arthur reached back into the folder. There's one more document. He handed me a sealed envelope. Thin paper. Old. My father stared at it. What is that? I turned the envelope over. The handwriting on the front stopped my breath for a second. Lillian Prescott. My mother. Arthur spoke quietly. She asked that you receive it when the trust was activated. The envelope felt lighter than I expected. Thin paper. My mother's handwriting across the front. Slightly faded, but unmistakable. Sebastian stared at it like it was some kind of trick. You're really going to do this here, he said. Arthur answered before I could. She asked that Vivian read it when the trust was activated. I slid a finger under the seal and opened it. The paper made a soft whisper when I unfolded it. Funny how your mind notices tiny sounds when the whole room is watching you. I began reading, My dearest Vivian, if you are reading this letter, it means something I feared might one day happen. My voice stayed steady. Honestly, that surprised me. I knew your father married me for access to the Prescott capital. I also knew he believed I would never recognize the danger in time. Sebastian let out a sharp laugh. This is absurd. Arthur didn't even glance at him. I kept reading. So before you were old enough to understand the world you were born into, I placed the majority of my shares into a protective trust. A murmur moved quietly through the ballroom. Not to punish your father. The letter continued. But to protect you from the day loyalty inside this family might fail. My father's face had gone pale. Not angry. Not shouting. Just pale. I read the final lines. One day, the company will face a moment that reveals the truth about the people running it. When that moment comes, the trust will pass its authority to you. I lowered the paper slowly. The room stayed completely still. You ever feel someone who's been gone for decades suddenly change the direction of the entire room? That's what it felt like. Sebastian finally spoke. His voice sounded smaller than I had ever heard it. She planned this. Arthur nodded once. Yes. I folded the letter carefully. Then I lifted my eyes and looked directly at my father. The ballroom had mostly emptied by then. A few board members lingered near the exit, whispering to each other. Some investors pretended to check their phones while quietly watching us. My father stood across from me. No stage now, no applause, no audience to impress. Just the two of us. He spoke first. So this was your plan, Sebastian said quietly. Public humiliation. I still held my mother's letter. You humiliated us long before tonight. His eyes hardened. You think exposing your own brother makes you strong? Arthur Caldwell quietly stepped away from the table, giving us space. Even he understood this part wasn't legal anymore. It was personal. Sebastian shook his head. You were never meant to lead this company. For years, those words would have broken something inside me. I spent most of my life trying to prove him wrong. Tonight felt different. I placed my mother's letter on the table between us. You always said I didn't deserve this company. I said. He didn't respond. But you forgot something. I tapped the paper once. I'm Lillian Prescott's daughter. The words hung in the air longer than any speech that night. My father looked down at the letter like it had suddenly become unfamiliar. You ever see someone realize the ground under their feet was never really theirs? That's what it looked like. I turned toward the exit where the remaining guests were leaving. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's patience, preparation, waiting for the truth to arrive at the right moment. If you've ever been underestimated, you probably understand that feeling. And if this story made you think about your own family, stay with me a moment longer. Sometimes the quiet stories are the ones worth telling.